Hello, welcome to PTAC's Native Prairie Speaker Series. My name is Caitlin Rose, and I am the Stewardship Coordinator with Saskatchewan Prairie Conservation Action Plan, or PTAC. Today, Melanie and Toppie with Southwest Saskatchewan Conservation Action Program, or SODCAP, and the Frenchman Wood River Weed Management Area will be talking about identifying the big weeds. A few notes before we begin. This webinar is presented to you by Eco-Friendly Sask, Pembina, SaskCal, Wildlife Habitat Canada, Saskatchewan Cattlemen's Association, supporting sponsors are Camp Wolf Willow, Ranchers Stewardship Alliance Inc., Environment and Climate Change Canada, and in-kind support has been provided by SODCAP and the Frenchman Wood River Weed Management Area. Just a couple of notes for participants. You are muted, so if you have any questions, just type it into the question section of the webinar dashboard at any time during the presentation, and questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. And, I'm just having a few technical difficulties. It looks like everyone can still see my screen okay. Perfect. So there's a few questions coming in. Can everyone hear me okay? If not, you can toggle between the audio and the phone and just switch from one to the other. And I'll try to talk a little louder on my end, so my apologies about that. PTAC hosts a monthly Native Prairie Speaker Series. You can check our website for upcoming events. And then all of our past webinars are recorded, and you can find those on the PTAC YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/user/FTPTAC. And a little bit about today's presenter. Melanie Toppie is a biologist with the Southwest Saskatchewan Conservation Action Program and the Frenchman Wood River Weed Management Area. So, longest organization name ever. Melanie has 2 diplomas in fish and wildlife from the Sandford Fleming College School of Natural Resources and a bachelor's degree in biology from Trent University. She has over 15 years experience working in the field of biology. Melanie has been working with SODCAP and FWRWMA for 3 years in Southwest Saskatchewan, where she maintains and enhances relationships between different entities in regards to invasive weeds. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Melanie.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Carolyn, for the introduction. As she said, I'm Melanie, and I'm gonna go over some weeds. So there are unfortunately a lot of different invasive weeds in the prairies on both sides of the border. I'll not have time to go over every single one of them, so I've picked about 20 species. I will be going over some of their key identifying features as well. I have basic maps that show which states and provinces the weeds have been found in. They're very general. So for example, if one plant of salt cedar was found in the entire province of Alberta, the map will not pinpoint where it was found. It will just have the whole province highlighted. For more information on locations that are a little more specific, look into your provincial weed database. So in Saskatchewan, it's IMAP invasives, and in Alberta, it's EDMAPs. As well, I created this presentation while I was away, and my computer wouldn't allow me to use the maps from IMAP or EDMAPs for my presentation, so I just used these maps from the United States. Okay, before we get started, there are a few things to go over when it comes to the leaves of the plants. Opposite, alternate, and world describe how the leaf sits on the stems. You can see on the picture the difference between the 3. Opposite leaves are pairs positioned opposite from each other. Alternate leaves are single and alternate on the stem, and world is where at least 3 leaves are evenly spaced around the stem in the same spot. There's many different leaf shapes out there as well, so just quickly browse over that picture on the left there. It'll help give you an idea of what the different ones are. For this presentation, you'll hear lance-shaped, lobed, oblong, and linear for the most part. Okay, the first weed I would like to talk about is baby's breath. I feel that many people are very familiar with this plant, but in my mind, it's still a major issue that needs to be dealt with in flower shops, nurseries, and where seeds are sold, because you can still get them. So the more people that have been educated about it, hopefully the more people out there will know the concerns of having this plant in your gardens and in your flower bouquets. Okay, baby's breath will grow anywhere. It, like most invasives, is an opportunist, so it just takes advantage of any opportunity it can. It quickly spreads, and once it's out of control, it's hard to manage, and it becomes an expensive problem very quickly. It crowds out other vegetation, and livestock and wildlife will not eat it. The leaves of baby's breath are 1 to 4 inches and a blue-green to gray-green color. They are long and narrow or lance-shaped and have a single vein in the center. They also have hairs on them and are opposite on the stem. The flowers, which are the telltale sign of the plant, are small and white, sometimes a light pink color, and there are a lot of them. Baby's breath are highly branched plants, and the branches are spread out. With the light colored small flowers, the plant will look like a puffball. Unfortunately, baby's breath is widespread throughout the prairie provinces and throughout most of the continent. Baby's breath was named because it was widely used as a baby shower gift. It's also used in wedding bouquets because it represents everlasting love and purity. The seeds keep developing even after the plant has been cut or picked. And the sad thing is, flower shops are still selling it and you can still buy seeds for it. So if you happen to be at a flower shop to get a bouquet for someone or for yourself, make sure they don't use baby's breath and educate them on the negative impact that the plant actually has. Our next invader is Dalmatian toadflax. Dalmatian toadflax is found in a variety of habitats, like many weeds are. It chokes out other vegetation and it will hybridize with yellow toadflax. It's a perennial and has a taproot and creeping root system, and it also produces a milky sap when the leaves or stems are broken. The leaves of the Dalmatian toadflax are kind of a heart shape and they clasp to the stem of the plant, which means there's no stem from the main stem of the plant to the leaf. They're waxy and found in an alternate pattern on the stem. The flowers are yellow to light yellow, and the center is generally a little darker than the rest of the flower, and they also have a long spur at the base. They look very similar to a snapdragon found in your flower garden. They flower through June to August and sometimes into September. Dalmatian toadflax is found in various spots across North America. In Saskatchewan, where it is a prohibited weed, it's only found in a few locations, according to IMAP invasives. And because it's only found in a few places, it is a weed that could be eradicated if it's dealt with as soon as it's found. Our next plant is yellow toadflax. Yellow toadflax grows in a variety of habitats. It also chokes out other vegetation and it can be slightly toxic to wildlife. Like Dalmatian toadflax, it is a perennial with a taproot, and a creeping root system. It also produces a milky sap that is evident when the leaves or the stems are broken. The leaves of the yellow toadflax are alternate on the stem, but can appear opposite if there's a lot of them and they are crowded together. They are long and lance-shaped and have small stems to them. There are no hairs on the pale to silvery green leaves. Yellow toadflax flowers are also yellow. They are generally a lighter yellow with a more orange or yellow-orange center. They also have the spur at the base. The flowers are in spike-like clusters along the upper portion of the stems, and they flower June through August and into September sometimes. Yellow toadflax is a noxious weed in Saskatchewan, and it's found throughout most of North America. So the difference between yellow and Dalmatian toadflax is in the shape of the leaves for the most part. Dalmatian has the heart-shaped leaf, and the yellow toadflax has the long skinny leaves with a stem. As well, the color of the flowers is a little different. So on yellow toadflax, there is a greater contrast between the colors of the outer and inner parts of the flowers. The outer part of the flower tends to be quite pale. So this plant on the right is the yellow toadflax, right here. And this is the Dalmatian toadflax. So you can also see the difference of the leaf on this plant. Okay, this picture is meant to give you an idea of the garden snapdragons and the two invasive weeds. The first picture is what you would find in your garden. Hopefully, that's the only one you find in your garden. And the one to the right is the Dalmatian toadflax, and then to the very far right is the yellow toadflax. And you can easily tell the difference because they don't have, the garden variety does not have the long spur at the base of the flower. So if you have a flower that looks like this in your garden, go check it to make sure you got the garden variety and not the invaders. Okay, our next weed is Dame's Rocket, which is a beautiful purple flower. It grows in a variety of habitats and crowds out more valuable plants and will especially decrease riparian health. The leaves of Dame's Rocket are green and hairy on both sides, and they have toothed edges. They are 2 to 6 inches long and are found alternate on the stem. The plant has been very popular for gardens because of its fragrant purple flower clusters. The purple flowers have 4 petals. There are pink and white varieties of Dame's Rocket that do exist as well. Dame's Rocket flowers beginning in May, and it will flower through June or July. Dame's Rocket's found throughout Canada and the United States. It produces a large number of seeds and can spread very quickly when it becomes established in riparian areas. This makes it almost impossible to get rid of because of its proximity to water and the restrictions of spraying chemical next to a waterway, which makes sense. Okay, Hound's Tongue is our next weed. Hound's Tongue is found in a variety of habitats like all other invasive weeds, so tame forages, native prairie, roadsides, disturbed areas. Hound's Tongue's barbed seeds cling to hair, wool, and the fur of livestock and wildlife, and that can cause an increase in stress to the animal. As well, Hound's Tongue could cause liver damage in different livestock. So you really want to be careful of this weed if you have animals on your property. Hound's Tongue leaves are lanceolate and both sides have hairs. The basal leaves, which are the bottom leaves, look like a tongue, which is where it gets its name from. Hound's Tongue flowers in June and July. The flowers are a bluish violet and turn to a brownish red, dark violet in color later on. They are fairly small flowers. They're less than an inch across. As you can see, it has been found across the country. Currently in Saskatchewan, there are just a few reportings of Hound's Tongue. This is another weed that could be easily eradicated as soon as it was found, and we can protect our landscape from it with early detection and early response. Okay, now I'm going to go into a few of the knapweeds. And the first one I would like to talk about is diffuse knapweed. Diffuse knapweed grows in native prairie, tame forages, and along roadsides. It quickly chokes out other vegetation and livestock will not eat it. The leaves of diffuse knapweed are woolly and deeply lobed. They are alternate on the stem, and instead of having a stem, they more clasp to the stem. The basal or bottom leaves are cobwebby. The flowers of diffuse knapweed are white and sometimes light purple. The flowers are tubular and numerous and sit on top of stems. They have triangular bracts with spikes on them. And the bracts are these little pieces here. Hopefully you can see my mouse, but those are the bracts. Diffuse knapweed is located across most of Canada and in the United States. Within Saskatchewan, there's only been a couple places where they have been reported according to IMAP invasives. And as you can see, it's not reported in Manitoba according to the American version of Agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture. The second knapweed we'll talk about is Russian knapweed. Of course, it grows really well in cropland and native prairie, tame forages, and along roadsides. It also will choke out other vegetation and it decreases wildlife habitat. The leaves of Russian knapweed are alternate on the stem. They're narrow with irregular teeth at the plant's base. The upper leaves have smooth edges with a tiny spike at the end of them and usually clasp the stem. When the plant is young, the leaves are woolly. Russian knapweed flowers are normally purple, but they can also be pink. The blossoms look silvery when they're closed, and the flowers are tubular and sit atop of the leaf branches, which just means that you have these branches with the leaves, and there's one flower right on top. Russian knapweeds found throughout Canada and the United States. Although there isn't a lot of reports of it in IMAP invasives, for Saskatchewan, there are a few more than diffuse knapweed. Spotted and square rose knapweeds are the third and fourth knapweed species I will just go over briefly. Both these species have not yet been reported in Saskatchewan or Manitoba. Spotted knapweed has been found in most states and in Alberta and Ontario, whereas square rose knapweed has not. Again, this provides a great opportunity for us to detect early and respond quickly to any observations of both of these knapweeds. So both species have pink or purple flowers that sit on top of those leaf branches. The difference is that the bracts of spotted knapweed have black fringes that give it the spotted appearance. The bracts of square rose knapweed have a central spine that curves backwards. So here you see the plants, and you can see on the spotted knapweed the black tipped bracts, and on this one the backwards curving spikes on the end of the bracts. Here is a picture of all four of the knapweeds. Now, in my mind, the easiest way to tell them apart is to look at the bracts. Notice the Russian knapweed bracts, there really isn't anything there except you can see the scaly appearance. The spotted knapweed has the black tips giving it the spotted look. The square rose knapweed has the backwards turned spikes on their bracts. And the diffuse knapweed has spiny bracts, but the central spine does not curve backwards, and there's no black, so that would make it diffuse knapweed. Our next plant is perennial pepperweed. Perennial pepperweed, which I'm just going to call pepperweed from now on, will grow in a variety of areas, dry and wet, including stream edges and riparian areas, cropland, native grassland, and disturbed areas. It takes over an area and chokes out the vegetation that's more valuable. Pepperweed leaves are waxy and are green to grayish green and are oblong shaped and long. They are alternate on the stem and have a prominent white vein up the middle of them, which you can see very nicely right here. The flowers are tiny, they're white, and they're found in dense clusters. And each of those tiny white flowers has 4 white petals. Pepperweed is found throughout most of Canada and the United States. At this point, there's no pepperweed recorded in Saskatchewan, but it has been recorded in Alberta, Manitoba, and Montana. Some interesting information about pepperweed is that its roots can get up to 9 feet deep and spread laterally. The root pieces of the plant can float downstream and start new plants very easily. Our next invasive weed is white top, which is also known as hoary cress. White top grows in the same kind of areas as most invasives, such as roadsides, cropland, tame forage, native prairie, and gravel pits. It also will choke out desired vegetation. The leaves of white top are bluish green to grayish green and are covered in fine hairs. They are egg to arrow shaped. The basal leaves, the bottom leaves, are a little more narrow and are large. They have leaf stalks, whereas the upper leaves clasp the stem. The flowers of the white top have 4 small white petals and are densely clustered on stem tops, and they flower May through July. White top has been found in Saskatchewan and the surrounding states and provinces, but not in the territories or Newfoundland, Labrador, or in that bottom southeast corner of the US. According to IMAP invasives, there is only 1 recorded presence of white top in Saskatchewan. Now, I just want to make sure you know that just because it's not in IMAP doesn't mean there's not more. It's just that has been what's recorded in IMAP invasives. White top and perennial pepperweed are somewhat similar in appearance in that they have tiny 4-petaled white flowers. The difference is in the shape of the flower cluster and in the leaves. Remember that pepperweed flower clusters are more spread out and their leaves are waxy rather than hairy, and they have that prominent vein on the back. Our next weed is yellow star thistle. Yellow star thistle is found in most of the usual spots invasive weeds are found: tame forages, native prairie, cropland, roadsides, gravel pits, those type of areas. They are a greater threat than some of the other invasives. The reason being they do choke out better vegetation, but they also consume a large amount of water. As well, the thorns around the flower can injure animals, and if horses were to consume this plant, it is toxic to them. The lower basal leaves of the star thistle are long and deeply lobed. The upper leaves are long and narrow and have wings that run down the stem. So here you can see these are the wings. So the stem is in the center, and then you have the winged leaves along the edge of that. I'll just go back for a second so you can take a look. Okay, so the flowers are very distinguishable with the thorns that are arranged around the yellow flowers, as you can see here. So they look like a thistle flower, but they're yellow and they have those lovely looking thorns. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, yellow star thistle has been found in the prairie provinces. However, according to IMAP invasives, there has been no reports of yellow star thistle in Saskatchewan. And according to EDMAPs in Alberta, none has been recorded there either. However, it is found in a few different areas in North Dakota, Minnesota, Montana, and Washington. Now, I'm not sure about Manitoba because I am not quite sure which database Manitoba uses for their invasive weed observations, but yeah, IMAP and EDMAPS have no records of yellow star thistle in Alberta or Saskatchewan. Okay, next is the aromatic weed absinthe. Absinthe grows in tame forages, yard sites, cropland, native grassland, in gravel pits, and along roadsides. It competes with other vegetation and can also taint hay. Part of the problem with this plant is people think it's sage because it smells very nice. And then they think it's sage, so they think it's a native plant, they think it's good, and they leave it be. Absinthe leaves are grayish green. They have silky hairs and they're divided into deep segments. They almost have like a fern-like appearance. As well, the leaves sit alternately on their stems. The flowers are similar to fringed sage flowers. They are small and they are yellow and they are up along the stem, as you can see in the pictures. Absinthe flowers late July through into September. Because absinthe is a silvery color and it's aromatic, many people think it is a sage plant, and they are big and they're beautiful and they grow nicely, and so they leave them. But you can tell the difference from the sage plants from the woody stems combined with the divided hairy leaves. So here I have a picture of prairie sage, absinthe, and fringe sage or pasture sage. And as you can see on the pasture sage, the flowers there are very similar to what absinthe's flower looks like. But the plant is a lot smaller, it's not as robust, and the leaves are very different. Absinthe is located in the central part of North America. It's widespread in Saskatchewan. And it's still sometimes found in small patches that are manageable. So hopefully people can recognize the plant and be educated about it and start getting rid of it. The next few weeds I'm going to talk about are grass-like weeds. And the first one we're going to look at is jointed goat grass. Jointed goat grass is commonly found in croplands, especially in wheat, but it also does well in ditches, pastures, and roadsides. It's a threat to wheat production where it can decrease yields and crop quality. As well, it can choke out other more valuable vegetation. Goat grass is very similar to different wheat species. The main difference is that there are hairs along the edge of the leaf and at the auricles, which is where the leaf, where the leaf comes off the main stem is where you'll find the auricles. If you bend the leaf back, you'll see it. Wheat species won't have the hairs, and the seed heads are also quite different, as you can see in this picture right here. So these are wheat species and this is goat grass. So at this point, thankfully, jointed goat grass has not yet been found in any of the prairie provinces. However, it is in the United States, south of the border, in Montana and North Dakota. So we do need to be on the watch for it. The weed needs to be dealt with as soon as it's found. It not only threatens the native prairie and pasture land, but it can have a great impact on crop production. Jointed goat grass has been spread primarily as a contaminant in weed seeds. So when, or if you're buying seed for wheat, barley, durum, all those kinds of crops, be sure to source your seeds well and source clean seeds, certified clean seeds. The seeds of jointed goat grass will remain viable even after they pass through all the stomachs of a cow. And another important and interesting fact is that this invasive is more drought and frost tolerant than wheat. Okay, our next two grass-like invasives are downy brome and Japanese brome. They're both fall annuals or winter annuals. They are quite similar in appearance and can be difficult to tell apart, but let's go through each of them and then we'll compare them afterwards. Downy brome will grow almost anywhere. It really becomes a problem when it finds its way into cropland, especially winter wheat, where it will outcompete winter wheat for soil moisture and nutrients because it'll grow sooner. The awns of the plant can cause injury to grazing livestock and to wildlife, of course. Okay, so downy brome is generally 4 to 30 inches tall, so up to a foot. The leaves or blades are light green and covered with fine soft hairs. The ligule is very long, normally with a very jagged edge and normally hairless. So the ligule is on this, on in here, that little piece that's sticking up that looks jagged. The panicle is drooping and the seeds have awns that can be purplish, but they aren't always purplish. Once the colder weather comes, or if it's drier, downy brome will normally become a purplish color. Downy brome has been reported in almost every state, province, and territory of the United States and Canada, except for Nunavut and Newfoundland, Labrador. So our next one is Japanese brome. Japanese brome grows in very similar places as downy brome and has similar impact. It displaces vegetation that's more valuable, such as native and tame seeded forages in cropland, and it can decrease the quality of crop as well. The awns of the plant can injure livestock and wildlife, just like the downy brome can. Japanese brome is anywhere from 8 inches to 4 feet tall. It has hairy sheets and leaves are almost always hairy. So you can see that picture on the right, how hairy that leaf is and the stem. And as well, the ligule is long and hairy, which is the center part that sticks up in that stem. The panicle has slightly drooping spikelets and the awns are long and sharply bent or twisted. There are still some areas in Canada and the United States where Japanese brome has not been reported. Unfortunately, it is found in the Prairie provinces, north and south of the border. Okay, so this is where the fun begins. How do you tell the difference between downy and Japanese brome? Downy brome is less hairy than Japanese brome, but it is hairy. And its ligule is taller and more jagged, as you can see there, this right here. And there's your Japanese brome. The awns are straight to slightly bent, for downy brome, whereas Japanese brome awns are sharply bent and or twisted. Okay. And finally, downy brome has a more spreading appearance with drooping seed heads, whereas Japanese brome is more compact looking with slightly drooped seed heads. All right, moving on. So next we're going to move on to one of the ugliest and the most beautiful invasive species I have ever seen in pictures. I haven't seen it in real life, thank goodness. Okay, and it's salt cedar or tamarix. Salt cedar is grown mostly in riparian areas and wetlands, but it's also found in flower gardens and yards. This shrub will choke out other vegetation, but really that is not the worst of the issues it creates. Salt cedar will concentrate salt near the surface of the soil, which helps to decrease competition from other plants. It is fire tolerant. And lastly, a mature plant will consume colossal amounts of water, so up to 757 liters every day. Not year, not month, but every single day. The leaves of the salt cedar are similar to other cedar plants. They are scaly looking. They are blue-green in color, and they turn to a golden orange in the fall. The reason this plant is so attractive for homeowners to grow is the thousands of beautiful pink flowers that it has on a plant. As well, it has a very long flowering season. It'll flower from spring to fall. There are not a lot of reports of salt cedar in our part of the world. However, I know that salt cedar has been found in 2 locations in southern Saskatchewan, but the plants were removed right away and the area has been monitored since. As well, there had been word, and I think it was discussion on Facebook, that someone had a species of tamarix in their flower garden in the Saskatoon area. And I actually don't know whatever happened to it, but this is one plant that is very detrimental. The way that it concentrates salt near the soil surface and its use of water makes it a very dangerous invasive weed, especially in the southern part of Saskatchewan where water is, such a precious commodity to begin with. All right, the next few invasives that I'm going to talk about are aquatic invasives, and we will start with flowering rush. Flowering rush, like our native bulrush, likes rivers and lakes, permanent wetlands, and it will grow in water up to 9 feet deep. It is a competitor with the native vegetation and can negatively impact wildlife habitat and water quality. Flowering rush leaves can be up to 1 meter long. And when they're cut, they have an obvious triangular shape, as you see in that picture to the left. The flowers are a rose color and are arranged in umbels. They are very pretty, which is why they have become, why they have been used in yard ponds, which is how they have become introduced into North America. They are very pretty. So that umbel is kind of the shape of this here. Flowering rush is found in the Canadian provinces, except for Newfoundland. This map is a little misleading. Flowering rush is found in Saskatchewan along the Saskatchewan River on the west side of the province. So I think it is safe to assume that it came across into Saskatchewan from Alberta because it was found in Alberta previously. The next aquatic invasive is Eurasian water milfoil. This plant also likes water, of course, and it grows in lakes, rivers, and permanent wetlands. It grows in water that can be up to 10 meters deep. It forms very dense mats of vegetation that choke out native vegetation and decreases the quality of aquatic habitat for wildlife. Because of the denseness of the mats of vegetation, the chemistry of the water can change. So not as much light from the sun can come in, and also it'll use up a lot more oxygen that can cause issues for the rest of the vegetation in the water. Not only that, it can get caught up in boat motors and in fishing lines. Eurasian water milfoil is transferred to new areas simply by a small piece of the plant that gets transferred. The feather-like leaves are arranged in whorls around the stem. Each leaf has 12 to 21 leaflet pairs with 12 or more thread-like segments. So that picture on the left can kind of show you the leaflet pairs that I'm talking about. We do have native species of water milfoils, and the difference between them and this invasive is the number of leaflet pairs. Native species will have 5 to 9 pairs instead of the 12 to 21 of the Eurasian water milfoil. The flowers of the milfoil are small and pink with 4 little petals, and they form above the water in erect spikes. So you can see them on that bottom left corner there. The top are just the buds, and as you go down, they're quite small. The picture's not the greatest, so they look white, but in fact they are pink. Eurasian water milfoil has not been reported in the prairie provinces, but it is in province and states on 3 of our 4 sides. Hopefully, as boaters check drain and dry boats for the prevention of zebra and quagga mussels, this will help prevent the invasion of milfoil from getting into our waterways as well. So if you're a boater or you know a boater, there's so many reasons to clean, drain, and dry your boats before you leave the parking lot of a waterway. Our last aquatic invasive is curly-leaved pondweed. Curly-leaved pondweed is found in water, obviously. It is tolerant of low light and cool temperatures, which means that it can start to grow in the spring before most native species have started to grow. Like milfoil, it'll form dense mats of vegetation, outcompeting native vegetation. It can get caught up in boat motors or fishing lines and can also change the chemistry of the water like the Eurasian water milfoil. Curly-leaved pondweed leaves are reddish green in color, and they are curly, almost like a lasagna noodle. They are alternate on the stem and are oblong shape. They have 3 main veins, and the edges are serrated. Native pondweed species have smooth leaf edges. So we do have native pondweed species in Canada. The flowers form in a short spike above the water and are very small. I'm not really sure how you would describe these flowers, but this gives you a good idea of what they look like. Okay, curly-leaved pondweed is found in most of Canada and the United States. According to this map, it hasn't been found in Manitoba. So again, as with the other invasive weeds, it's really great to clean and dry and just rinse off your boat before you leave the parking lot of whatever water system you are at, not just for the plants, but also for zebra mussels and quagga mussels. Okay, so that is what I have for ID. I've listed off a few resources here if you have more questions. IMAP invasives and EdMaps, I believe, are the same, where you can actually download an app on your phone, and if you see an invasive weed, you can report it right on your phone. It's very easy, very efficient. You just have to sign up for IMAP invasives. You have to sign up for an account. And if you go to the website, there will be a information on who to email to get a password and to get access to that. I highly recommend reporting weeds that you find, whether you saw them on this presentation or you know of other weeds. It just helps build a database. It gives land managers an idea of what's out there. So even for myself with the weed management area, I can access IMAP invasives and see where different weeds are within the area that I work, but I can also get notifications if a new species pops up somewhere, and then it can be dealt with right away. And of course, more information is better. So helping to report these weeds is is more beneficial than you might think. Also, most of the provinces have invasive species councils, and their websites are very good. Especially Alberta and BC, they've done a really good job with having fact sheets and good pictures and information about the different species of invasive weeds and how to manage them. I can't specify I can't give a prescription on how to manage certain weeds just because I don't have a professional agrologist designation. But a lot of the fact sheets that the provincial invasive species councils have a good idea of what to use. You can also contact your rural municipality. They will generally have a weed inspector that can help you with a management plan. And if you live in a weed management area, so for example, the Frenchman Wood River Weed Management Area is in the south, and we have 5 participating RMs and a park that is involved in our weed management area. So I work with them and their patrons, and we do a lot of mapping and management and education, as well as surveying for new weeds that might be in the area. And that's all I have. I just want to thank PCAP for letting us do this presentation, and there's my contact information if you'd like to get a hold of me for anything, I guess, especially weed related stuff.
Now, that was a really awesome presentation, really informative. A lot of our listeners have typed in saying thank you, that it's been very interesting as well. To any of our listeners out there, if you have any questions, just type it in the section of your webinar dashboard. And Melanie, there are a few questions here already. One, Julia says that she's not a big fan of glyphosate and Roundup, and is wondering if that's the only way to get rid of these invasive species. Glyphosate get into our water supply so quickly. So she's right. I'm on the same page. Any comments, Melanie?
It was hard to hear what you said there. Sorry. Could you repeat that? Something about Roundup?
Yeah. Maybe that's better. Sorry, I'm having some audio difficulties today. Julia is wondering if Roundup is the only way to get rid of these invasive species, because glyphosate gets into our water supply so quickly.
Right. So I think what you said, it asked if chemicals was the only way to get rid of invasive species. Is that correct?
Yeah. So what else can we do besides glyphosate?
So it depends on the weed sometimes and the infestation, really. So if you have a huge infestation, you're going to want to use chemicals. There's also there's programming through SARM in your rural municipality for chemical cost sharing. There's also different animals can help. So sheep and goats are really good at helping to manage something like leafy spurge or even thistles. You can also, if it's a smaller amount, picking always helps. You want to pick right before it starts, like kind of when it's flowering, or as soon as possible, as well as mowing or cutting. But when you mow or cut, you want to look into the weed to make sure that those small pieces don't create more plants, and you want to cut them before the seed has developed, before the flowers developed, because if you mow when there's flowers or seeds, you're just spreading it further. But usually those kind of things is you have to just keep on it, and eventually the plant weakens and it should die off. And that's the same with the grazing. There are some biocontrols available that I would just email me, and I can let you know what is available out there. There's not a lot for biocontrols, but leafy spurge, of course, has the flea beetle, and there are a couple other things that are being tested, but I'm not sure that they're available yet. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it's a complicated answer, I guess. A listener named Alana is wondering if there are any certificates for plant ID or invasives that you recommend for biologist professionals.
Oh, well, there's that little mini book that has gone out in Saskatchewan, and it's very small, but honestly, I think that's a field guide that someone could create. I don't have one that I would recommend because I haven't found one that I like. That's specific to weeds.
Okay, no problem. So no recommendations. That's okay. A question about Japanese brome by our listener Michael. How does it reduce crop quality?
Because it'll take over and grow in place of the wheat, and it'll take up the nutrients and the waters that the wheat would prefer. And the seeds can be, like if the seed head gets into your, when you harvest, it can also decrease the quality of your seed. So if you get it checked, I don't know what the process is, but there's the potential for it to get into your seed, to your crop, and decrease its value.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that answer. Listener Troy is wondering, what is the best method to control down brome?
It's a winter annual, so fall tilling or fall spraying. So you'd have to go out and look to see when it starts to grow and starts to get green, but you'll want to do it in the fall. It's a fall annual. I think I said perennial, but I meant annual.
Have you had a lot of success? Okay. Have you had much success with that personally?
Pardon?
Have you had much success with it personally?
I have not. So I know there in the weed management area, there's a few places where we have found one of the two brome. I haven't looked at it enough to know the difference between the two. And so it was to be sprayed in the fall. I haven't been back there yet this year just because I was a victim of COVID. So in Australia, stuck in Australia. So I just got back. Yeah, I haven't been back to site, so I'm not sure.
Okay, no problem. There's a listener, Julia, who'd like to know, so why are plants considered to be invasive? Is it because they're invasive? They're labeled to save invasive to save cows, or are there other reasons for the invasive classification?
So that's a good question. In my mind, an invasive weed is one that is not native to the area, and it grows and outcompetes with native vegetation or cropland or whatever that's more valuable or has natural enemies and that sort of thing. So in my mind, if it's not native and it's growing and it's hard to control, I guess, is how I would think it. I mean, there's a lot of like smooth brome or Kentucky bluegrass. Some people consider Kentucky bluegrass an invasive species. Foxtail barley is a native species, but it's a weed, right? So yeah, it's a good question.
Okay. It has to be not native, though. A native species would never be called invasive. Is that correct?
Right. So, well, if you look at the Saskatchewan Weed Control Act, there's different designations. So there's prohibited, noxious, and I forget what the last one is, which is the category that foxtail barley falls under. And all of the prohibited and noxious weeds are non-native weeds.
Thanks. So listening, Michael would like to know where these species are native to. Is there a general trend, and are there attempts to try to relocate them?
So generally speaking, they came into North America mostly as a garden plant, like before the 1900s, for the most part, not always. And so a lot of them are from Europe and Asia. And so when people settled here, because they were beautiful in their home country, they brought them to put them in their gardens here. And then some were brought over in like ship ballasts, that type of thing.
Thanks for that answer. Our listener named Dr. Arendam, pardon my pronunciation there, is wondering if there's no Parthenium species.
Sorry, what was that?
Are you familiar with that at all? Parthenium, I believe, is a scientific name for a species. Are you familiar with that one?
I'm not. Not that I can think of.
Okay, no problem. Because it was just about it. If you have any more questions, maybe you can clarify a little bit more. And next one, we've got 2 more questions, if that's okay. Our listener Julia says that as early and local weed are rare species, do folks ever confuse the 2 invasive species of Dalmatian yellow toadflax for each other, or with local weed? Do you ever get the confusion between toadflax and local weed?
Oh, you know what? I haven't heard about that, but I could kind of see it. I would think though that local weed is found more in like the native areas, right? Where the toadflaxes will be in the native areas, but they'll be more likely in disturbed areas. Yeah, I I would have to look more into that. I mean, I can picture local weed, but to describe it, I'm not very good with words. So it, like my contact information is there. So I am going to write that down though, local weed. Sorry.
Okay. No problem. No, that's okay. This is the last question. It might be a tricky one. I don't know if you can answer it. So Julia is wondering, how come leafy spurge on government websites regarding an invasive species is referred to as Euphorbia acela, and that's the European Latin name for it, but the North American name is Virgata. And the Latin name is pervasive in lots of invasive species literature, and it should be E. virgata in North America, but it seems to be using the European one. Do you know anything about that, or any way to change it?
I have no idea. I have
not that with leafy spurge in the scientific name.
Yeah, and honestly, I think I would contact the website, like whoever's running that website. I would maybe ask them, even if it is the government. Like, yeah, I'm not. I only know it as Euphorbia ursula or whatever that one's called. Yeah, Euphorbia acela is how I know it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good advice. Maybe Julia can contact the website directly. And then one listener asked about how they can get a copy of this presentation. So it has been recorded and will be uploaded to the PCAP YouTube channel. Melanie, would you be interested in having it posted on the PCAP website so people can refer to it in the future?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. I'll touch base with you after and we can get it up there then, and that way, anyone who missed the presentation today or wants to review some of the notes and stuff, they can look at it. And there's been a few people writing in. It's a great presentation. And one in particular, Chris and Heather from Marie really enjoyed it and said, excellent presentation. So, with that, I just want to say thank you so much, Melanie, for doing the webinar today. And I know we looked at doing it while you were stuck in Australia. I'm glad you're able to make it safely back to Canada. And I'm sure you're really jet lagged. So extra appreciation for doing the webinar for us today. So thank you so much.
No problem. It's been a pleasure.
And to all of our Okay. So all of our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in and catching our webinar. Check back with the PCAP website about upcoming webinars. And when you leave this presentation, there'll be a quick 1-minute survey that will pop up. If you don't mind filling that out, we appreciate it. It'll help us keep our webinars going into the future. It's been very successful in our social distancing times, so we want to keep it going. So with that, thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.